Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host today. I'm honored to have Dr. Wilcox. Dr. Wilcox is a doctorate prepared nurse who also holds a master's in health administration and is board certified in nursing informatics. Dr. Wilcox has 28 years of healthcare experience in which he worked as a bedside nurse, hospital administrator, and in healthcare information technology, which has helped him to develop his unique perspective on the American healthcare system. Dr. Wilcox is the author of the book, How to Avoid Being a Victim of the American Healthcare System. This is the second time we're talking, and one of the reasons I wanted to have Dr. Wilcox on is we know the issues that are governing us right now, and we understand with the killing of Mark Thompson of United Healthcare by Mr. Mangione. It's a big topic of discussion. Dr. Wilcox, welcome to Politics and Right. Thank you so kindly for being here.
Thank you, Egberto. It's always good to see your smiling face and to educate the American public on what's really going on in healthcare, especially in a situation where the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, was murdered in the streets. So we're going to have a robust discussion today for sure.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. Without my interference or whatever, what are your thoughts about that incident, specifically that incident and the rationale that Mr. Mangione is using? I don't know if he's in his right mind or what, but the rationale that he's using. What were your initial thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of Americans have been hurt by the insurance companies denying their care and sometimes even died. So a lot of Americans have a negative view or perspective of the insurance companies. But nobody's ever taken it to the streets, right? So this guy, whether he was in his right mind or not, actually planned this out, knew what he was going to do, and took this fight to the streets. He wasn't even covered by United Healthcare, but United Healthcare is the biggest healthcare insurer in America outside of the government. And so that was his intended target. Like I said, in this day and age, or like we just went through this election, right? Mm-hmm. And people were saying, if I don't get my way, if this candidate doesn't get elected, then all hell's going to break loose. So we kind of have that environment right now in America, but to see somebody act on it the way that he did was a bit alarming. But I can understand why the emotions run each way. If you're somebody who's had somebody die because of the lack of care and the insurance company's denial, or been injured or had a bad outcome because of it, then you're on the side of like, hey, man, maybe this guy did the right thing, right? Not that murder's the right thing ever, but you can understand people's emotions. And then there's people in the other camp who are like, this is terrible for his family, which it is. But more than likely, there are people who haven't been harmed by the insurance company at this point.
I am glad to hear your response in that regard. This morning on my KPFT 90.1 FM program at Pacifica Network, we were talking about that. And, it's a responsibility when one is speaking to a large audience to be careful with the wordiology. Mm-hmm. And I try my best to do that. But also, I'm glad the measured response that you gave, because a caller called in, and because I made a statement similar to yours, he said, by the way, Egberto, suppose after listening to your call talking about CEOs that causes the dying, the deaths of many of their citizens, suppose somebody listening to you say, yes, I need to do something about that, and they go and execute. Should we blame you? Should we then say you caused the murder of somebody? And I explained the differences in what I do and what the insurance company executives do. And also that, no, we are not asking anybody to go out there and take the matters into their own hands. But I want to ask the question. I brought that up as a precept to ask this question. If you listen to the DA yesterday of New York, the DA of New York, and all the people in the legal community that charged Mr. Luigi Mangione, they were really adamant that this guy did the wrong thing. He took the law into his hands and he's an evil person. Don't you think that it is high time that the media look at the health insurance industry as a villain that kills and talk to them just the way they talk about Mangione, who killed that person, who took a life, and the insurance companies that take hundreds of thousands of lives.
Yes, they kill people legally, right?
Right.
Right. So healthcare in and of itself is very personal to the person receiving the care. But the business entities that grow up around that, the pharmaceutical companies, the insurance companies, the pharmacy benefit managers are there to make a profit off your money. So, healthcare is set up. The insurance companies are hoping you'll pay your premiums, you'll live a good life without any major disruptions health-wise in your life, and you'll die fast. And if you do that, you're fine. If you don't do that and you get a nasty cancer and you want to go to MD Anderson, well, all of a sudden it's out of network, right? Now you got to pay out of your pocket. Or if your doctor wants to prescribe a chemo drug for you that he knows is going to work, they say, no, you got to go back and use this lesser price chemo drug. They have no medical expertise. All they're trying to do is look after their shareholders' profits. But you hit the nail on the head. They legally kill people all the time. Legally, people have negative outcomes and live in bad conditions because the insurance company makes a decision. They control the amount of money that goes out. So much to your point, yes, I do think the media should start to look at them as a business entity who is only trying to make profit and doesn't really care about the patient themselves. I mean, we've seen artificial intelligence used by United Healthcare to deny claims. It's a fast, efficient model. You don't have to pay a doctor. You don't have to pay a nurse to look that claim over. You just use the AI and deny. And what they do is they hope when they deny those claims that you'll go away. But 90% of the people who actually go after those claims, they actually win them. So not a lot of Americans know that they can, go after the claim and take it up to state attorney general and say, I need some help with this. And 90% of the time they win. So these insurance companies know what they're doing. I mean, this isn't, it's not an accident. They're just trying to make as much money as they can. And they're making huge profits at the expense of Americans every day.
And it's amazing that you said they know what they're doing. They know that eventually they'll likely lose the case. But two things happen when they eventually lose the case. The patient, if they were ill enough, could die, at which case nothing is paid anyway. Or as they wait, they're building up time, and they know most people won't go through the trouble, like you said, of doing that. What is really concerning to me as well is that, again, at any given time, I don't know what the percentage is, but let's say at any given time, 2 or 3% of the people are sick in this country. I think that is one of the problems why people don't really see the urgency of the problem. Enough people at one time don't see the urgency of the problem, because if only 2 or 3% of us are really sick that have to interact with the insurance companies at any given time, we have a tendency in our society to be very forgetful of the past once things are over. It's like January 6th happened and everything is okay now. Nobody understands how dire a situation that is. And item after item, issue after issue, it seems like we are, and I don't know if we're designed that way or if the way our society works in America makes us that way. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think this guy who committed the murder set off.
Yeah, Mangione.
Yeah, right. He set off reaction. So as I'm studying this in the American people, I mean, there were people that were elated that he did this, right? I mean,
yes.
How many times do you see that? People who think he's a hero. So in your January 6th comparison, that happened. There was a lot of bickering back and forth about what really occurred or what the truth was. In this situation, this guy is rewarded for his behavior by some people who say, you know what, they got my aunt, they got my mother, there's insurance companies, about time we got one of them. Right or wrong, that's the way that they feel. But if you look back to things like Columbine, nobody was shooting schools until that occurred, right? And then all you got these copycat killers running around shooting schools, going in and harming children. And what I'm afraid of is that we're going to see a little bit more of this before it's over. That there's going to be people who think, you know what, I'm going to do what that guy did because my mother died of a nasty cancer and was denied care. So you've seen the insurance companies' reaction to this. They've taken down the bios. Aetna's taken down their bios. Major insurance companies are starting to beef up security for their executives. But why aren't they looking at their model and seeing what caused this? Why America's perception of them is so negative? Why don't they look at their business model? I mean, good God, they're making profit hand over fist. You don't need to make that much profit. You could give back to people who are really sick. It's just an insane model. And it's insane that we as Americans continue to allow it to happen, right? Because our country has some of the worst healthcare ever. And I don't mean that by doctors and nurses. What I mean is the system itself. So, we're 17th in quality outcomes in industrialized countries. Right. Yeah. And people are always like, I want to have choice. They don't see what's really going on because they haven't been exposed to different models. It's just crazy. But, when you start to fire up the American public about something like this, you got to watch out because, like I said, if people are calling him a hero, there's going to be other people who are probably thinking right now what they can do to impact the healthcare insurance companies.
It is amazing that you use the example of what I guess the insurance companies have learned a lot from the gun industry. Instead of tackle the problem, double down and prevent it from. I mean, it's like what's the problem to guns? More guns. What's the problem to the insurance? Surround yourself by gun. I mean, it is just amazing how these people think. I read you now. There's another issue that I want to point out to our listeners. To show the evil within, and somebody told me evil is kind of mystic. Maybe it just is the bad within. But you remember the times when Medicare came out. The reasons for Medicare was because insurance companies couldn't figure out a way to make a profit on older Americans. So therefore, they were either insuring them at a very high rate or not insuring them at all. Here comes Medicare. Medicare goes ahead and handles insurance for them, and they give now that they have a backstop, insurance companies say, okay, the government is taking care of Medicare. How can we get our foot in there? Hey, government, for what you're paying in Medicare, give us a fixed cost and we'll take care of it for you now. Suddenly, they can afford to do Medicare. I wonder what's the cost of that. Explain the ills of Medicare Advantage versus Medicare.
Sure. So let's just break it down into something that's really basic, a business principle. If you have a CEO that's making $10 or $15 million and is managing your care at an insurance company, why would you continue when you're going into your golden years to pay them to manage your care? Because Medicare Advantage has been shown to deny claims that traditional Medicare would pay. And not only that, Medicare Advantage programs and different hospitals are saying, they deny it so much, we just don't want to work with them. So now, if you're an older American and your community hospital says they're not going to take your Medicare Advantage plan anymore, you have to drive 2 or 3 hours to go to another hospital that will take it. It's a scam. Medicare Advantage is a scam. Anytime you can remove the insurance companies from your health care, and you have the opportunity to do that when you turn 65, you should go straight to Medicare. The problem with that is it's very confusing. Like, most Americans don't know what to do. So then we have the Medicare Advantage people bring in these independent counselors, right, that steer you towards a plan with them. Oh, we'll give you a little dental. We'll give you some vision, all that kind of stuff. They're there to make a profit. They're not giving you anything for free. They're there to make a profit. If you go to straight Medicare, then you never, ever have anybody interfere with your doctor and your care. You can go get care anywhere. Medicare pays 80%. You get the gap insurance that goes with it, which is actually an insurance company, but there's different rules at that point. They can't deny care. They just have to pay the 20%. So it's interesting that we have a model that works well for older Americans and that these insurance companies want to get their foot in the door and continue to make a profit after you turn 65. Steer clear of Medicare Advantage, people.
It is amazing because they didn't want to do it until they had the government to back them up. These are the people that don't want government. Interestingly, even if we take a look at the NHS, the National Health Service in Great Britain, now that they're bringing the private sector more and more into their system is getting worse and worse. It was a system that was, again, yes, you wait longer for a hip replacement. That's not an emergency, but it's a system that worked, a system that you never went bankrupt, etc. Now, some of them are attempting to follow some of the U.S. model, a failed model. Now, you wrote a book. And we spoke about this before. And what I want to do here is because I think if we get people more educated on our healthcare system from people who've been there, who understand it, I think it's essential that we inform folks about it. So anybody who's written a book about what's going on that is a fair and honest book, I want to make sure they have a chance to talk about a little bit about their healthcare within the context of their book. So please go ahead and talk to me a little bit about how to avoid being a victim of the American healthcare system, a patient's handbook for survival, a book written by you, Dr. David Wilcox.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, when I finished my doctorate, I thought I have so much knowledge of the healthcare system. I've been in and out of it. I know exactly what to do when an insurance company denies my claim. I know exactly what to do. And not a lot of Americans know that. And so I sat down to write this book because I wanted to give them a handbook. Like some people tell me, oh, I read the entire thing. It's great knowledge. And some people will say, I bought it and then I had a problem with my insurance company denying me a claim. So I went to the insurance chapter and I read what you had written and I used some of the loopholes that you suggested and they actually paid my claim. So I just wanted Americans to be informed. Now, if you go into the American healthcare system and you have no knowledge of it, that's a very dangerous position to be in because medical errors are still the third leading cause of death. So think about that for a second. And it's not like people want to error, but there's doctors and nurses who are pushed by these insurance companies to see certain amounts of patients. And sometimes they make mistakes. It happens. You just don't want to be on the other end of it. So this book is geared to make you knowledgeable about the American healthcare system. So when you walk in, let's say you're going for an elective surgery and you bag up your own medications because you read the chapter about going for surgery in the book. And so you bag up your own medications and you tell them, while I'm here in the hospital, I want you to give me my own medications. Boom. You're not getting the $50 Tylenol, right? And the upcharge for that. Or if you're going to get surgery, you want to be the first case of the day because that's when your surgeon is the sharpest, right? So, and plus you're not going to be able to eat or drink anything. So wait till 4:00 in the afternoon is miserable. But statistics show that first cases of the day do better than last cases of the day. So, all these kind of things that I picked up on my healthcare journey while I was in the business and still am, I just put it on paper because I want to help people. I've heard from a lot of people who said it was life-changing. They knew what to do. One guy told me when he had started asking the surgeon all those questions, are you on call the night before? I want to be the first case of the day. And that surgeon was just like, are you a doctor? And he's like, no, but I'm educated. Uh-huh. So, that book, How to Avoid Being a Victim of the American Healthcare System, you can find it on Amazon. You can also find me if you need a more personal approach at drdavidhelps.com, drdavidhelps.com. I'm out there. I'm here for you. I want to make sure that everybody's educated. And, healthcare is very personal. And so when we have business entities that don't treat it that way, we as Americans need to hold them accountable.
I will have all of that information in the links because more now than ever, we need a lot of what the knowledge that you've put out there. By the way, I don't remember. Is there a chapter on Medicare Advantage in there at all?
No, there isn't. And that's the one thing I've been toying with writing a book about Medicare in general and Medicare Advantage, and because I get so many questions about it. That's like probably the number one question I get all the time. How do I
have a suggestion for you, Dr. Wilcox? A real good suggestion, and that is your book is already on Amazon. Your book is already in ebook form. Yep. You don't have to you just add another chapter, an appendix to that book that you already have written, and just add it in. It's kind of dynamic these times with the way you can do books, because I think that is important. And then re-release the book, because more than ever, we need a lot of what you speak about, my brother.
Yes, I agree with you 100%, especially as people are aging and they don't. I mean, Medicare doesn't make it easy to sign up. Let's figure you got to have Part A, B, D if you're using prescriptions, and then you got to get gap insurance. Whereas the Medicare Advantage, the one thing that they do have and they market very well is, hey, no problem, man, I'll take care of you. It's going to cost you a lot less money. Come on over here. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But in the end, they are an insurance company. They're there to make a profit. And if you get really sick, you're going to have problems.
Well, Dr. Wilcox, you've spoken to me before. What should I have asked? What should we have talked about that we didn't?
I think we pretty much covered it. I'm hoping that my Columbine theory is wrong, but I just, that the reaction from Americans on both sides of this issue is definitely speaks volumes to me about, I don't think this is going to be a one and done incident.
Well, it's interesting because a plurality of younger folks, and it's amazing that I find it to be that of younger folks. A plurality of them actually are on the side or said that he did. They're lifting him up as a hero for finally giving the system. Our system needs a lot of work, and we're going to have to find a way to do it, and we're going to have to find a way to do it peacefully.
Yes, we are. Definitely agree with you. And also, one thing we should discuss is under the new administration that's coming in, Dr. Oz is a big believer in Medicare Advantage. He holds over $500,000 worth of stock in United Healthcare, at least in 2022, when he had to reveal all that to run for office. So he's going to be pushing to privatize Medicare. So when we start to see that, we need to fight back, because that is the wrong move. That's not a move for Americans. That's a move for profit, to put money in people's pockets and privatize Medicare using Medicare Advantage. So stay alert and stay focused on that issue.
Well, you will be back on again, Dr. Wilcox, because we have to make sure and keep folks informed. We know the mainstream media, who gets a whole lot of money from all these different insurance companies, they will not spend the necessary amount of time. They will mention it, but they won't spend the necessary amount of time on it where people are actually hearing the message. Dr. Wilcox, thank you so kindly. Author of How to Avoid Being a Victim of the American Healthcare System, a Patient Handbooks for Survival, that you can find at Amazon and in the links in the accompanying blog. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to see your smiling face, my friend.
Thank you, my brother. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Today, I'm honored to have once again the guy from Social Security. What is it called again?
Social Security Works.
Social Security Works. Alex, how you doing, my brother?
Wonderful to see you.
Talk to me, man. Listen, first of all, we are in dire straits right now. People are scared about what's going to be happening in December. I mean, not December, but November. What are your thoughts?
December 2, right? What comes after?
Well, that's true.
But yeah, it's a scary time. I mean, it was always going to be a fight no matter what, because fascism is on the rise around the globe.
Right.
The far right alignment with the billionaire class is real, and it's global, and it's here in America as well, and it's really easy to understand. The billionaire class have come to the limit of what they can accomplish by hoodwinking the public, by being like, just trust us, just give us the in charge, and the corporations are going to deliver for you.
Right.
And what people have seen is that means they don't get health care, right? And instead of getting health care when they get sick, they get a denial letter.
Right.
The banks are like, oh, come on, put your money with us, and da-da-da-da-da. And what people have seen is that means, they're getting charged for just the privilege of having their money somewhere. And these banks make money by extracting it from people. They then are like, we don't have to convince you to put your money in our bank. We're just going to financialize the world. You think housing is for living in. We think housing is for extracting as much money as possible. So rents are skyrocketing, right? That is when the public says, enough. The government has to act. They have to take on these corporations. They have to protect people. And that's when the billionaire class says, okay, it's now time to do this alliance where we take over government. We stop the belief in the will of the people, right? So it's no surprise that Donald Trump talks about the end of democracy, because what he is doing is saying no longer should public policy be the voice of the many. It has to be the voice of the few. And that's the fight that we're in. So it's real, and people should be afraid, but the threat of tyranny also embedded in it has the hope. We know how to defeat fascism, tyranny, and its solidarity. So what we need to do is not mourn, but organize and fight as hard as we can from here until November. And then no matter what happens, the fight, the struggle continues.
Now, did it surprise you, the Supreme Court rulings that slowly eroded, actually, I would put it bluntly, democracy, that they would give the presidency the type of immunity that they're giving it, that they would start for the first time taking away people's rights? Does this seem to you like some sort of an orchestration between the billionaires and the elite? I mean, the billionaires and some in the government?
Absolutely. They took over the Supreme Court. It was a decades-long campaign. They had a strategy to do it. The strategy was lie to the American people, right? You saw all the confirmation hearings. Every single one of those right-wing, bought and paid for judges looked square in the camera and said, I'm not going to overturn Roe.
Right.
Settled law.
Right.
And then as soon as they got in there and got the power, what did they do? Everything that autocracy wanted. So did it surprise me? No. Is it scary? Yes.
I want you to do something, Alex, because, you and I and many of us that are progressives, we speak in certain terms that the folks that follow Donald Trump, it sounds kind of elitist, okay? The Supreme Court did several things. It took away women's rights. It went ahead and made the executive supreme. It also did away with this gave the pathway to get away with civil servants not being able to do what they do with regulations, etc. So they are instituting these things, but people don't understand what it means to them every day in a bread and butter manner. How can we best explain it, including to those MAGA folks who, if they realize, those folks in Appalachia, if they realize what they're voting for, they will probably think twice. Not all of them, but some of them think twice.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty of getting the story across is there. But what people should realize in Appalachia, for example, coal miners have been fighting the bosses literally for generations. Much of the birth of the labor movement happened in the mountains of West Virginia.
But now they are the people who most support Trump.
Because we're seeing a hoodwink, right? We're seeing propaganda and demagoguery. But it's also important to recognize what gives the opening for that. And the opening for that is when people do not see the democratic institutions fighting for them. When their material life circumstances are not improving. when they are getting sick and not getting the care that they need. That's the opening that gives people, they're like, well, why is democracy so important if it only seems like it works for the super rich?
Now, you're the exec director of Social Security Works. One of the things that fight, in fact, for Social Security, but giving health care to everybody. It is something that people in Appalachia, people in the ghettos, people in the barrios should be run into because, hey, this is what we want. How do you personalize that to those folks so that they will see that they don't fall for the hoodwink? Because I'll be honest with you, that is what I have. About 40% of my followers are conservative or MAGA. Mm-hmm. And one of the hardest things that I'm trying to learn the approach, I'm trying to learn, and I mean that sincerely, how to best talk to these people that they take what I'm saying, they build that trust in us to see that what these guys on the outside are fooling them about is just that, hoodwinking them, as you stated. How can we create a message for that? Have you been working on that sort of a thing?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not exactly what progressives want to hear, because I oftentimes start with a shared hatred.
Right.
Because if I walk into a room and people aren't really there with me, some of the things that I start saying is, who in this room loves pharmaceutical corporations? Nobody's hands go up. Who in this room loves high drug prices? Nobody's hands go up. Who in this room loves Social Security? Everyone's hands go up. On the issues, the people are with us at not just small percentages.
Well, I like what you just said there, all right? Right? You start with the hatred. I think that's what they learned.
It is what they learn.
I mean, I think that is what the other side is, and I think that's
what demagoguery totally.
Exactly. So, I mean, I like that idea.
So they are the opposition. They are the billionaires.
Right.
They are Big Pharma. They are Wall Street, and they're terrified of the people figuring out that together we can challenge and defeat their power. So they rush in there with a demagogue and say, actually, I'll be the one to deliver what you want. It's not the billionaires aren't the reason that your housing costs are unaffordable. It's the immigrants.
Right.
It's not the billionaires why you can't get medical care. It's this other person over here. And that is the sleight of hand. That's the magician's trick that the autocrats play. But if I start by saying, who likes Wall Street, right? No one does. Well, let's look at who's working for Wall Street. Let's see who's challenging Wall Street. And right now, you look at someone like Lena Khan at the Federal Trade Commission, smashing up monopolies in a way that we haven't seen in 100 years.
That is what is so interesting. It's amazing to me. I was never a Biden fan, but I learned to love Biden because this neoliberal turned out to be the most progressive president in my lifetime.
In mine as well. And I came from a similar place of, I was not expecting much.
Right.
But I, as you know, moved to Washington, D.C. to challenge pharmaceutical corporations, to dismantle their system and build one based on public health.
Right.
A lot of Democrats have come and said, I'm going to get Medicare the right to negotiate drug prices.
Right.
They've been saying it for years. I've been fighting for it for over a decade.
Yes.
Joe Biden takes the White House. I'm not expecting much. He immediately takes on pharma and wins.
Yes.
Right? The largest investment in actually reversing the climate crisis that's ever been made.
Yes.
He is governed very much from the perspective of real, people, grassroots concerns.
Without saying the word. Without saying the word.
Exactly.
Which is a smart thing to do. And, and for that, I thank the guy. I'll be blunt. I don't know how things are going to work out in the end, but I think, like I said, we have to acknowledge what the facts are. So, Alex, what I'd like you to do is two things. Tell our audience, number one, where we are within the Social Security domain and the healthcare domain, and also give them some hate. On Social Security, it's really interesting because Donald Trump is he's a liar. We know that. He lied about Social Security to get elected the first time. He's playing the same playbook. It's right there. It says,
no cuts to Social Security, including raising the retirement age. But we also know who he puts in power. We know what he does. We don't need to listen to his words because we saw what he did as president. He cut Social Security benefits with a process called continuing disability reviews. Every single budget of his destroyed Social Security. His gang only have one idea. It's cut our benefits and give tax handouts to billionaires. So no, that man is not the champion of Social Security. The Biden White House and platform is going to fully embrace expanding Social Security and taxing billionaires to pay for it. If we can get the American people, even if they only see that and they sort of believe Donald Trump, that distinction is huge, right? He says no cuts and not going to raise taxes on billionaires, and that's an inherent contradiction. Joe Biden's plan is to expand benefits, increase benefits for people, and tax billionaires to pay for it. It's simple, and it's what people want. On healthcare, it's even more simple. Donald Trump and the Republicans want to fully destroy traditional or original Medicare, the guaranteed healthcare part of our system, and replace it entirely with privatized Medicare, so-called Medicare Advantage. This is a system that's just insurance companies again, and they only have one way of making money. They take our money and deny our care. They do not have an incentive to provide health care. So on these issues, the choice is so clear, there is no choice between the Democratic vision for the future and the Republican vision for the future. And we have to fight like our health and our future economic security are at stake, because they are. And I'll end with a little bit of welcoming their hatred is what FDR did when they asked him about the banks. I think that's the way that we have to play this. The pharmaceutical corporations are going to dump money and say, oh, Joe Biden is bad for this or that. Joe Biden and the Democrats have to welcome the hatred of big insurance and Wall Street and the corporations whose price gouging they call inflation, and just fight for the people no matter what. And that is the only path to victory that'll actually achieve in November.
Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. Thank you so kindly for being on Politics Done Right.
Great to see you. Great to speak with you as always.
Absolutely. Top Democrats warn Trump to steal from federal programs. Yep, that is the idea. That is what you voted for. That is what progressive activists will try to mitigate, to correct for the grave mistake that this country made. One of the biggest searches on Google after the election was how to change your vote. Amazing, isn't it? Big question on Google, how to change your vote. Because after people made that gut decision, and for many, that sexist decision, and for others, that racist decision, even as they knew better, they sat and asked themselves, oh my God, what did I do? And Ramaswamy and and Musk, crypto kings, they are actually going to show you if progressive activists aren't successful in slowing things down to ensure that America is saved. And this isn't hyperbole what I'm talking about. But anyhow, it has already started. The media has already started its appeasement. I wrote this piece yesterday. I was kind of, on Sunday mornings, I get up and I have to be in my studio at 8 sharp, because that is the time CNN starts with its first Sunday news show. Well, the first real Sunday news show. Then it goes to NBC and CBS, as well as Fox and the others. So I have all these screens up and I'm watching all these things. And today I'm trying to see, or yesterday on Sunday, I'm trying to see what's coming. How are these guys going to go ahead and talk the narrative? And I'm thinking, is it going to be appeasement like Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski did with Trump? And now they're trying to, justify it. Likewise, the New York Times. Likewise, the LA Times. Likewise, the Washington Post. Is it going to be appeasement like all the news medias seem to have been doing? The answer is yes. So look, I've been complaining about the mainstream media. This is the article that I wrote yesterday for my Substack and other places. And it says as follows. I've been complaining about the mainstream media and its willful inability to challenge our oligarchy and degenerates like Donald Trump. I watched as Morning Joe's Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough parachuted into Mar-a-Lago to kiss the Trump's ring. And after the progressive dust-up, pretty much gave the excuse that, hey, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and others are doing the same. So brother Joe Scarborough went on TV, and I like Joe. I love Mika. But it went on TV and said, look, others are doing it too, so why not do it? Yeah, but what you did was appeasing the criminal. You appeased the criminal. You gave the criminal stand-in. So really, Joe, that's what you thought you needed to do? With several papers like the Washington Post and LA Times changing their editorials to satisfy Trump, I'm not sure that puts Morning Joe in good company. If that was not bad enough, Morning Joe's producer in real time scolded ultra-conservative David Frum for criticizing the drunk and woman abuser Pete Hegseth. You know, the guy that's going to be defense secretary? And notice I said the guy that is going to be defense secretary. You know, Joni Ernst, after giving the impression like she has no intention of voting for Hegseth, said, I'm going to meet with him again. Well, you know what they did to Joni Ernst in Iowa? They put up a whole bunch of ads that said she's part of the establishment. She's part of the deep state. So they're scaring her into voting for Pete Hegseth. Is it going to work? We'll see. But I have a feeling it's going to work. What did he say? What did ultra-conservative David Frum say on a purported to be relatively liberal station, MSNBC, that got the MSNBC producers to give him a hard time, to criticize him in real time? Hey, you better watch what you're saying, Frum. All he said was the truth. He said about Hegseth, if you are too drunk for Fox News, you're very, very drunk indeed. After that commercial break, Mika also issued an apology calling the true statement flippant. She said what he said after Frum left the studio and after the break, she called it flippant. He told a truth and she called it flippant. Frum criticized the Morning Joe fiasco in an article he wrote for The Atlantic titled The Sound of Fear on Air. In other words, the takeover of the media by the oligarchy is complete. The sound of fear on air. It's like we are back in the Soviet Union, where Pravda was the national paper and could only say the things that the people in power would have them say. Remember Pravda? The article is more than a decade late, as the damage done by mainstream media fear began from the time it became a profit center, more so than the unambiguous truth teller. As I do every Sunday morning, I set up my computer screens to watch all the Sunday morning shows from the major news networks. I grabbed a few clips, but as I clipped more and more video clips, I got more and more upset. Why? The questioning of the president and his sycophants was nothing more than the platforming and the normalization of an alternate universe. No real pushback on the stream of lies, misinformation, and misrepresentations was addressed in any substantive fashion. One irked me specifically when Donald Trump said to Kristen Welker that his economy was greatest and that the inflation was low for Biden's first year and a half because of said economy. Because of Trump economy, he claims Biden's inflation in the first year and a half was low. That's BS, of course. Welker did not use the opportunity to tell Americans the truth. And the truth is so simple. And if she told the truth and the right wing got mad about it, that would even further enhance the truth, because we could have come back and said, here are the numbers. You're fighting about it, right wing. You're fighting about it, MAGA, but here are the numbers. And let me tell you what she should have said. The fact is that Trump's economy, as a continuation of the Obama economy before COVID-19, was no better than the Obama's economy, because he passed no growth policies other than a tax cut that exploded the debt more than any president in American history. Again, Trump, we thought Reagan was bad on a proportionate basis, but Trump exploded the budget more so than any other American president in history. Inflation had not started going up with his mismanagement of the economy, because COVID-19 killed demand. If you don't have demand, you can't have inflation. It kept inflation at bay. Again, if you have a pandemic, you don't have demand. If you don't have demand, you don't have a problem with people buying, and as such, prices either fall or stay the same. It's a mathematical truth. It's a mathematical fact. It's an economic fact. As soon as we emerged from COVID-19, his inflationary policies took hold, applying tariffs not to protect American industry, but to tax Americans to help pay for his tax cut with higher prices. Same thing that he's trying to do right now. I paused from my article. The tariff that he's talking about coincides with the inflation, with the tax cuts that he wants to give to rich people, coincides with also what Vivek Ramaswamy and Musk wants to do with respect to their efficiency program, right? Because their efficiency program actually leaves everything untouched. Not touched, I mean. They said even Social Security is on the cutting block. Medicare is on the cutting block. So all of you folks who believed him, you believe the liar. You know he lies. We have proven he lies. You have seen with your own eyes that he lies. But you allowed your isms to vote against the one whose isms you didn't like. And in the process, your Social Security, your Medicare, your disability, they are all in danger in order to give people that have made a windfall over the years. All these billionaires made that windfall on your back. They used you. While productivity, Americans are great workers. Americans are the best. When people tell you we work, brothers and sisters, we work. You go to any other country in the world and you don't see people work as much. They have more vacation time. They have more grievance time. They have more time for lane load. They have all this time in the world. They have all. Americans are chucking it, working hard. And at the same time, the billionaires are telling you you're not working enough because you don't know how bad it is that they're using you. You don't realize that you're fighting to get to work. You're not having mass transit. You having to go into the traffic. You having to do all these things. And then they tell you you're not working hard enough, or you're a slough, or too many of you are slough offs. I don't know too many slough offs in this country. They highlight the slough offs to get you pissed off because you are working so hard, and the one or two slough offs that they make an example out of, you then create a hate for what they are saying there. Brothers, we're being hoodwinked. So we are the hardest workers in the world, and they still want you to work more. Do you know that our productivity went through the roof? And we got very little of that. All that money went to the oligarchs, to those folks who have billions. A few callers, specifically Brian, he gets upset when I say the billionaires make the money on your back. That is not conjecture. That is not, I think the billionaires make money on your backs. That is a statement of fact. The abuse of the worker is what have made the billionaire class. That's a statement of fact. Provably, analytically, computationally, provably. This does not remove the reality that our inflation was caused primarily by greed, given the lack of shortages in most areas. In other words, even as Trump's tariffs were inflationary, and we have to be honest, Biden didn't remove most of them, or if any. That wasn't what caused that 9% inflation. That was corporate greed. Supply chain was a minor issue that was exploded. Price of oil and the war in Ukraine and Russia was not a real incident because there was never, ever an oil shortage. If you recall, even as the war went on, Saudi Arabia and Texas corporations colluded to cut 2 million barrels of oil off of the market to keep prices high and raise prices. That wasn't your government doing it. That wasn't Biden doing it. That was your plutocrats. That was your oligarchs, the people that continue to play with your minds, the people that continue to completely indoctrinate too many of us. Because Trump, the oligarchy and their sycophants' false narratives are never corrected on topic. I'm talking about the news media now. I'm back to my article. Because Trump, the oligarchy and their sycophants' false narratives are never corrected on topic after topic. Otherwise, good people can be maganized. I just created that word, folks. Are you maganized? Are you maganized? Well, the media have allowed their airwaves to be used by the plutocrats to maganize many of your brothers and sisters. And while more than 50% of the population has not yet fallen for the lies, the distribution of MAGA around the country, along with the progressive apathy, gives the Trumpists a winning hand, which is what occurred. After listening to the news this morning, every MAGA listener could rest assured that Donald Trump is a great president that accomplished much in the past, that Joe Biden screwed it all up, and that his return will bring better days. That's what I heard on the news on Sunday. Any MAGA person listening, that's what they've heard, because no correction was made when Donald Trump said I had the best economy. No correction was made when Donald Trump lied through his teeth and Merkel said nothing. And all these other news people said nothing. The average listener would believe that while they may not have voted for Trump, he will be okay, because he sounded sensible. They made him sound sensible. They sanitized Donald Trump. They sanitized that guy who holds women by their crutches. They sanitized that person who robbed them with a Trump university. They sanitized that guy who stole from his workers. They sanitized that guy who raped women. They sanitized that guy who didn't pay his taxes and inflated the price of his properties to get a loan and deflated the price of his properties for taxes. They sanitized him. They don't mention any of these things, but any other progressives come on TV. They're ready to challenge them, but they don't challenge the evil ones. Those who follow politics are left pulling hairs as the Trump normalization continues. The media did nothing about telling the truth about Biden's policies. Left to their own devices, they will and have started bringing back manufacturing. That is Biden's policies. These are Biden's policies. Left, if Trump leaves them alone, if Trump does absolutely nothing, manufacturing is back, economic security is back, infrastructure building is back, and much more. Of course, most of those successes will be realized during the Trump administration if Republican politicians can get over their propensity to cripple our economy. Let's remember a statement of verifiable fact. The economy always does better under Democratic presidents. Look it up. By over 50%, 2-point-something% average growth for one, 3-point-something% average growth. That's a differential that is huge in GDP. As the media continues its renormalization of Trump and his billionaires, their systemic destruction of our society could go unnoticed. The only avenue to get the attention of enough people who can form the necessary challenge and opposition to catastrophic changes to what this country represents is a decentralized progressive media. I repeat, the mainstream media has failed. The mainstream media is failing. The only avenue left to get the attention of enough people who can form the necessary challenge and opposition to catastrophic changes to what this country represents is a decentralized progressive media. And guess what? It is happening. It requires multi-platform, multimodal, old school and new school journalism. We see truthful work taking space. We see truthful work taking up space in Substack and other newsletters, TikTok, Instagram, Telegram, emails, radio, streaming TV, videos, blog, books, flyers, threads, Blue Sky, and so on. It isn't easy to shut it all down. They may get to shut down TikTok next year, but the others, the new and the old, will resurface. Many of us activist journalists, and I mean, many of us who form part of the independent progressive networks have already had Zooms and meetups about how we're going to do this. The resistance to any bad policy attempts is ready. So as soon as bad policy is executed, we're ready. The one thing we continue to discuss is the lack of funding. Major corporations and the non-profit foundations they bankroll have no desire to fund independent media. Of course, corporate funding is non-existent. This is why every independent media network seeks popular funding and affordable small levels of support from the people who listens and the people who share, etc., etc. Folks, let me tell you, it's on you. As Tom Hartman always say, it's on you now, because the mainstream media, we have shown, because they are owned by the plutocracy, the oligarchy, the corporatocracy. If you want real news disseminated, we don't cost what they cost, but we get the job done. So when you see KPFT goes out there and say, folks, call 713-526-5738, extension number 1 to donate, to support the station, to support the truth. That's what we're talking about. The mainstream media has failed. All we've got left to save our democracy is the independent media.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.